Hi, what's up, y'all? What's good?
Hello.
Elliot, I like your shirt. It looks looking sickening. Looking
Thank
good.
you.
Guys, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the local legislative town hall. You are here obviously because you believe in trans and queer lives thriving, being blessed, all of the beautiful things that we want for our trans and queer siblings and kinfolk. I'm Natalie Neafa. I use they, them, and she, her pronouns.
And I'm Elliot Wade. I use he, him, his pronouns.
Yeah, and tonight's gonna be really beautiful, y'all. Sorry, I I get freaked out because of the way the mirroring works, Elliot. I'm like, what's happening? I move my head to the it's always weird. We're so glad that you're able to join us tonight, and yeah, we're so happy to have y'all.
Hey, we know that this is a tumultuous time and that there's a lot of fear mongering and confusion going around. So I just want to say that it's a great honor to have all of y'all share space with us. We hope that you leave this feeling empowered, connected to community, and informed. A little quick overview of who all of us are. Of course, we couldn't do any of this impactful work with all the folks here at LOCAL, which is the Legislative Organization Coalition for All LGBTQ plus Louisianians. That's a bit of a mouthful. Say that 5 times fast. We're a coalition of individuals, institutions, and orgs that want to amplify and celebrate queer and trans Louisianians. We're established to influence and develop legislation to improve and protect the interests of persons of diverse gender and sexualities across the state of Louisiana. Tonight, we're going to be hearing from a couple of folks from all over our state about some of the good, the bad, and the ugly bills. Feel free to take a second to check in the chat. Tell us your name, your pronouns, where you're located in the state. And yeah, we want to hear from you. Thank you again. And I'm going to pass it to my co-host for a quick grounding.
Yeah, thank you, Elliot. Thank you for grounding us in why we're here and who we are. So I have, of course, we can't do anything. We know that the legislative attack on us is a physical thing, it's tangible, but we also know it's a spiritual thing too. And so in order for us to protect our spirits, we often tend to ground ourselves. So bear with me. I have this embodiment practice that I want folks to do with me. And it might require you to stand up as you are able to. If you're not able to, that's fine. You already know I'm coming with the booty shot agenda. And so what I'll ask folks to do is to repeat after me and to move with me. So you'll start with your hands by shaking it out, right? And then you'll put your hands in a triangle right here around your belly, around the sacral and root chakra. And you'll breathe in and you'll say, I remember the place that grounds me. And this is a flow, so it's an embodiment flow. Then you'll pick your hands up to the sky and you'll say, I gather tools, resources, and informations from my transcestors and ancestors. Then you'll clasp those hands together and you'll bring it down and you'll say, I carve a path for myself in this life. Then you'll extend your arms out and you'll say, I expand beyond my limits. Then you'll bring your arms in. You'll breathe again. And you say, I return to my center. Then you'll do this. And you'll say, I released all expectations and outcomes. And then you'll bring your back where we started. And you'll say, I remember the place that grounds me. So we'll do that 3 times. And the intention is to ground ourselves for this next call that we're about to, for the next hour or 2 that we're about to be in, right? So I'll do it a few times and feel free to breathe with me, just follow my motions, or just feel free to let the words wash over you. So we'll start with that triangle and we'll breathe. I remember the place that grounds me. I gather tools, informations, and resources from my transcestors and ancestors. Breathe. I carve a path for myself in this life. I extend beyond my limits. I return to my center. I let go of expectations and outcomes. I return to the place that grounds me. And we'll do it one more time, y'all. So again, let the words wash over you. Feel free to do the movements as you're able to. We'll say, I remember the place that grounds me. I gather tools, information, and resources from my transcestors and ancestors. I carve a path for myself in this life. I extend beyond my limits. I return to my center. I remember the place that grounds me. Let's take one breath here. And so this is just a reminder, y'all, that we know the place that grounds us. We have transcestors and ancestors who will guide us in this work. We carve a life for ourselves because we deserve to be in social spaces and all spaces. We extend beyond our limits. We return to our center. We let go of any expectations and outcomes. And we return to the place that grounds us consistently. Sweet. Thank y'all for allowing me to ground us, beloveds.
Thank you, Natalie. That was amazing and so well needed during this time. I also know you have a little bit more for us in regards to the context of why we're here. So I'll pass it off to you again. Thank you.
Thank you for that useful passing. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Elliot. And thank y'all for grounding with me. So, beloveds, we have a why are we here, right? There's an important need for us to provide some type of context for why would all these powerful folks be gathering on the internet on a Wednesday after everyone's been working. But we have some work to do, y'all. We have some work to do. So there are some bills that are intentionally attacking trans folks the way that we exist, queer folks the way that we speak about ourselves and our loved ones, the way that we're able to access medicine that allows us life-affirming care. We are under attack in so many different ways. We're also here, though, because we're powerful and because we know that we deserve to thrive. And so whenever we come together, it's a show of power. It's digging into the rich history of Southern transness and Southern queerness that has always existed. And we're here to remind ourselves and to live in that truth. And so I'm going to go do a quick overview of some of these bills where they're trying to come for us, even though they can never take us. I'm going to do a quick overview of that. And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the blessings and beautiful things we have coming our way. Perfection. And I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. All right. So to start off with the bad bills, boo, we hate them. Tomato, 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 tomato. So we have Senate Bill 44 by Senator Beth Mizell. Boo. It's a ban on trans youth participation in sports. And so what this tries to do is stop trans and gender nonconforming youth from participating in sports from elementary to post-secondary school. It's basically trying to block us from having access to the social spaces that allow young folks to thrive, right? And we know that folks need to keep their hands off trans kids and that they deserve to be in social spaces, excuse me. The next bill that we have coming at us, y'all, is House Bill 570, sponsored by Representative Furman. And it's a ban on gender-conforming healthcare for young people. So this is the one that is trying to stop people from having access to the things that young folks are saying that they need, even with the support of parents. It's trying to stop folks from having access to things like hormones, therapy, all of the things that folks might need to live a gender-affirming and thriving life. And even the time comes for medical professionals, parents, and of course, particularly students. Boo, boo, tomato, tomato. And then the last one, y'all, is House Bill 837 by Representative Dodie Horton. And this is the Don't Say Gay, Our Classroom Censorship Bill. And so it prohibits the discussion of sexual orientation and gender identity in public schools through grade 8. There's been a lot of talk of K through 3, but this is through grade 8. And it censors teachers from discussing their identities through secondary school. So as folks can see, there's a lot going on, right? People are coming for us often. It's not cute. It's not cute out there. They're intentional attacks for us that are coming for us. And we know that ain't nothing gonna stop us and that we're still gonna thrive, but we have to be aware of what exactly is out there and what it is that we're organizing against. And so all that to say, right, there's some bad things out there. They're trying to come for us. But we know that we've been successful, y'all. We've been successful. So last year, there were 4 bills that were coming for us, 2 in the House, 2 in the Senate for sports and healthcare. But what we were able to do as a community, we were able to defeat those bills. We were able to stop every single one of them We also able to build solidarity between us and movements with Women with a Vision, for sex worker rights, for women's reproductive rights. We were able to build a community of solidarity and show up for each other. We were also able to launch local. We were also able to launch the Louisiana Organizing Coalition for all LGBTQ Louisianians. And so last year was a beautiful year for us. Not only have last year set the precedent, right? Not only can we show up for these bills, but we can show up and take care of each other while doing it. We healed together. We went on a beach trip afterward. We took care of each other. We learned how to navigate these legislative systems, and we defeated those systems too, right? And so I only say that to ground us in the history of the beautiful work that we have been able to do. Even if we have all of these bills, all of these things that are coming for us, we know, and we have historical proof as much as last year, that we're able to meet them where they're at and defeat them often. So we talked to y'all a little bit about what's coming for us, and we talked about what we were able to do whenever they have come for us in the past. Now we want to talk about who is looking out for us, and what are some of the blessing bills that we do have. And so I'm going to bring up Representative Boyd to talk a little bit about their bill that they're sponsoring. We're deeply, deeply appreciative of it. Hey, Rep Boyd, how you doing?
I'm wonderful. My face looks blurry, but I guess you guys can see me, right?
Yeah, no, you look good. You look good.
Okay, thank you.
The lip that's giving me life for me.
Thank you.
So I'll let you do your thing, and thank you so much.
So I've talked to several of you already about my bill, and the reason for me bringing my bill was my niece and the struggles she's had while she was in school. She just recently turned 17 years old last month and will be entering the workforce. And I would like her and everyone else to be protected as they attempt to get employment further on. So my bill will have to include sexual orientation and gender identity as a protected class. But I want to leave you guys with this. We always ask, what can we do? We need to come out in full force when it's time to vote. We are left with battles here in Baton Rouge, and I'm sure Rep. Landry and Rep. Freeman will attest to that as well. We are one of 104 people who have to vote on legislation, and American democracy is in trouble. You know, we're not equally protected. We're not equally heard here. And how do we change that? Change in the face of who's getting elected to these seats. I'm new to the legislature, but the things that I've seen over the last few months, the scales are not balanced by any means. And I'm going to say that's our fault. Voter turnout in every election is extremely low across the state. We're not doing well. We're getting people who represent our interests and who want to take care of us, take care of our children. You know, my niece has had the worst time in school in Kenner ever. This kid changes schools literally every year because of what she endures. You know, I'm concerned about her future. I'm concerned about all of our futures, really. You know, if we don't participate more and actively work to get people elected who will represent the things that are near and dear to us, we will be reliving the 60s all over again. You know, it is a supermajority here. We watched history last week with the governor's veto being overturned. We face this with every bill that serves to equally protect those who don't look like what they believe is the status quo. So my charge to you moving forward is that we find a way to motivate, get a movement of people going, not just in one election. We cannot be involved in one election at a time. We can't be reactive all the time. We have to start being proactive, which means we have to participate in every election. It's not good enough to show up for the gubernatorial election and then we don't show up for the midterm elections. We have a midterm election coming up in November of this year, congressional seats and U.S. Senate seats. We can do this. We've watched history show us that we can do it. So my charge to you, my bill, send emails, If once we find out when it's going to be assigned to the floor, show up, support. We're better in numbers. Please send emails and cards in support of this bill so they know how important it is for us. When we hit the floor, you can sit in the galley upstairs to be there to support this bill. Sometimes it's harder to look in someone's face and tell them no. I'm not going to tell you how successful we're going to be, but I'm telling you, if we move forward and we want to see something different, we have to show up for elections. We had a citywide election last year. It was less than 30% turnout, right? And if it's the same super chronic voters that are always voting, we're getting the same person with a different name. That's all it is. So my charge going forward, every time I am in a setting like this, is to really charge us with the responsibility of getting more people out to get the people who we know will speak for us, will speak for equality for all, and we will see a change then. And it won't happen overnight. But I told someone last night, back in the 60s and the 70s, that didn't happen overnight either. The bus boycott was 381 days. 381 days for them to change where we didn't have to ride in the back of the bus. And let's be committed to moving forward, getting something different so that our kids, my niece and everyone else, can live in a world that just where we have equal opportunity. That's all we want. We're not asking anybody to give us anything, just the opportunity to get what the rest of the world gets. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Representative Boyd. Deep, deep, deep appreciation. When we show up and show out for each other, things can change. Yes, deeply thankful for that. We see that there's almost 80 something of y'all in the building on different streaming platforms. Thank y'all so much for coming. We're going to keep deep diving into some of the beautiful things that people have set up for us. And so I'm going to welcome to the space Representative Mandy Landry, who's going to talk to us about a conversion therapy bill. We deeply appreciate you for holding space with us.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I'm in my car. As you can see, we have pretty busy schedules these days when we're in Baton Rouge, but I'm happy to be here. And I am actually working on a conversion therapy ban with quite a few advocates. It's something that last year some high school and college students approached me on. I wasn't sure last year was the right time. And as we ended up seeing with all the anti-trans and other hateful bills that happened, it seems like we're due for this. We are working on this with a really big coalition of people. Britton Forsyth is helping to organize. I think Britton may be on the call. And the bill would ban conversion therapy. I use air quotes because, as we know, it's not really therapy. It's actually abusive, coercive behavior by medical professionals. The evidence on this is clear that this so-called therapy does nothing but harm the kids and teens that it's used against, and that it definitely hurts the already fragile mental health status of many LGBTQ youth. So I'm excited to be working on that. But unfortunately, we also have, like y'all said, some of the bad bills to push against. So I'm hoping that everyone who is here to, work against the bad bills, the sports bills, and some of the others will also help us with some of these, good bills. We have a nice little coalition going here, and I'm happy to have any of y'all join our calls in the future. I don't know if anyone has questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Representative. If someone does have questions, what can happen is that they can go to mentimeter.com and they can type in a specific code, right? I'm going to drop the source. Oh, there we go. It's like we're going to TV show.
Yeah.
So if there are questions there, y'all please drop them into the mentimeter.com. Since we're streaming across so many different platforms, there's no centralized place for us to gather them. So go to the mentimeter.com and use that code at the screen, and we'll answer some of your questions after we explain some of the bills. So you're totally good, Representative Landry.
Yeah, see, isn't this banned in the first place? And it's a good question. Why is something that is so coercive and harmful allowed, and it shouldn't be? I think there's about 15 states or so who have banned it. So, hopefully we'll join that number. But even if we don't, I think what's important that some of the advocates mentioned is to show, to not always show up to fight against these bad bills, but to, go on the offense a little and say, like, wait a minute, like, we're people too. We have opinions and rights, and we're here to show you, the full spectrum, and tell you about something that's been happening that is hurting us. So I think that's important as well.
Ashe, Ashe. Yes, thank you so much for coming on. We deeply appreciate it. And yeah, you're right. We have to show up for all of the blessings that is set out there for us, and for all the work that the people out there who support us are doing. So as y'all can see, we have people who are ready for us. We have people who are writing for us, and who are writing bills on our behalf. And it doesn't stop there, beloveds. We're next going to move into another blessed bill, right? That's going to make sure that we have all the things we need in terms of housing. We know that we deserve fair housing and adequate housing. And so to talk a little bit more about how we're going to manifest that, we have Representative Amy Freeman, and we also have Maxwell, who is the Director of Policy and Communications at the Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center at the LAFCAC, the LAFHAC, sorry, Maxwell. He leads the organizing, legislative, regulatory, and communications work at the local, state, and federal level, related to policies that encourage fair housing choice and decrease segregation. Tell us a little bit more about the bill that y'all have in the running for us, y'all.
So the bill is something that we ran last year. And first of all, thank you all for including me in this, and for all of your work that you do. And I'm really thrilled to see Rep. Boyd and Rep. Landry in this virtual space, and have their support as we work on similar bills going across. But this one is just a very simple bill, but yet it got killed in committee last year. And it's been filed in the past by Jared Broussard when he was up here in the legislature, and then it had a gap of no one filing it. And what it does is it just puts Louisiana law puts Louisiana law in line with federal law, because it's against the law to discriminate on housing for LGBTQ. And now we're just trying to get Louisiana's law to match up with federal law. So you're breaking the law if you're discriminating, but we just want to simplify and we want to correct our constitution so it's in line with the federal law. Unfortunately, it died in committee last year. I made a commitment to Forum for Equality, to the Fair Housing Advocates, to many people in my district who, support and are LGBTQ, or if they're not, they support these values that you should be treated equally. And my commitment is I will file this bill as long as I'm in the legislature, because we need to keep this conversation going. And as Representative Boyd says, I'm only in my third year here. She joined in a special, but the more we file the positive conversations on our side, the more they have to listen to it. And, we just have to inch away at this, and really encouraging you all to be present on those battles as well, because we have so many tough battles we have to fight. And being that we are in the minority party, we need your support on these bills to explain to people so they can see the human side of what happens and in this situation. And Maxwell, I don't know if you want to add anything, but I fully am thrilled to have both Rep. Landry. I think I'm co-authoring Rep. Landry and Rep. Boyd's bills as well. So, we look for opportunities to help each other.
I'm sorry, I think I froze for a second there. Can you all hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Sorry. Well, I'm really grateful to be here, and really want to thank you for being the champion on this, and to all the other representatives who are working on these issues. As a civil rights organization, we'll absolutely be fighting alongside everyone else here and opposing all the anti-gay and anti-trans bills this session. But we really agree that it's important that we sort of push things forward and be pushing towards the world that we want, where everyone has access to a safe place to call home. And so we're really compelled to speak about HB 303, this fair housing bill, for those reasons, but also because it directly impacts our clients. So we actually had a client who was in Gretna who was renting a single family home. And during her time renting there, she met and started dating her girlfriend. And as is typical of dating partners, her girlfriend would sometimes come visit her at her house. And as a result, she was forced to endure vulgar, demeaning, and homophobic harassment from her landlord, who told her that she should have sex with him because she might like it, and that she didn't know what she was missing. And eventually, her landlord evicted her because of the visits from her girlfriend. So I think it's worth noting that the only opposition to this bill was the Louisiana Family Forum. And I don't know how you can claim to hold any sort of moral high ground while defending that kind of vile behavior. And that's exactly what we're going to say in committee. And we're going to make everyone very uncomfortable if they want to vote against this. And so I know Elliot was there last time and did a fantastic job testifying. Yes. And we would really invite all of you, as many as possible who can make it, to come. These are the sort of things that sometimes they take, a few years to get done. But like Representative Freeman said, you keep bringing it, we keep working on it, you make people uncomfortable until they eventually join you.
And if possible, if you live in an area, and I know you said there are 85 people on this call, so I don't know where everybody lives, but if you live in an area and have a representative who is not supportive of this bill, having a conversation directly with a representative, coming to the Capitol, trying to say, "Can you give me 5 minutes? I want to know why you're against this." And there are many of them who will do that. I mean, sometimes you can catch them on the phone. A lot of them have their cell phones published. And you can reach out to their offices. It's just really important to hear directly from you all on these bills.
That was so powerful. Thank you so much, Rep. Freeman and Maxwell. I want to introduce now Emmett Marwell from Athlete Alley to talk about the sports bill, which is SB 44. Thanks for joining us, Emmett.
Thank you. Hi, Emmett Marwell. I use he, him pronouns. So just a little bit about some context for these trans sports bills that we're seeing, the anti-trans sports bills. To put it into context, we've seen over 100 anti-trans bills introduced just this year, and over 30 of those, so a third of all of the anti-trans bills, over 30 are seeking to ban trans athletes from participating in sports on the teams that align with their gender. We've seen that those types of bills introduced across 26 states. So far this year, 5 states have signed athlete bans into law. And then those add to so now 14 states total have trans athlete bans. We've seen in Utah and Indiana, there were Republican governors who vetoed these athlete bans and essentially said that they don't find trans athletes to be a threat to women's sports or sports in general. Unfortunately, in Utah, the legislature overrode that veto. Most of these athlete bans this year are applying to K through 12 as well as higher ed. And looking at all of them together, a lot of these bans require proof of gender, in air quotes, and utilize invasive methods like examinations of genitals and internal reproductive anatomy or DNA testing, things that are really invasive and impact not just trans athletes, but cis athletes as well. If anyone were to question an athlete's gender, then these kids as young as 4 years old are subject to these invasive procedures. And then we also have found that lawmakers are, they're using trans folks as pawns in a political game, as a wedge, especially with the midterm elections coming up, trying to get votes. And at the same time, these lawmakers often can't cite any examples of trans athletes within their states where they're introducing these bills or signing things into law. West Virginia in particular got a lot of attention for this last year. So really it's fear mongering and it's causing harm, not just to trans athletes, but cis athletes as well. But we're doing a lot to push back against these, and hopefully there will be more governors who veto this harmful legislation, but we'll see how it goes. So thank you.
Thank you, Emmett, for your time. We really appreciate it. Next, we're going to pivot to Natalie Althorpe, who is a Monroe rep at Louisiana Trans Advocates. Natalie's an organizer and trans athlete who represents the Monroe region of Louisiana for LT. Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you, Elliot. And as he said, I am our Monroe rep for Louisiana Trans Advocates. I am also a very big athlete. You'll find me playing all kinds of things. Technically, right now, we're actually having practice. I have stepped away for this, as I am on the Monroe's roller derby team. And so a part of this is that this is big for me because even a few years ago, I tried out for the all-girls cheerleading squad at ULM. Had the coach's support. They just wanted to make sure that I cleared the NCAA standards. Now, granted, I did not make team. I made it to the last round, though, considering I was 30 at that point, so everyone was 10 years younger than me. And so, the fact that I was out there doing backflips more than some of the girls, I was quite happy with it. But not only that, like I was playing intramural sports for the college, and I had no issues. Well, now with this SB44, for people like me and athletes that are coming up now, like that's going to ban them from being able to play with their respective gendered peers. And so then you're stuck with, okay, well, I want to play, but to play, I have to pretend, I guess, that I'm a guy and I'm going to play over here with the guys. And so then that opens up even more discrimination because honestly, no one else should know. To the best of anyone's knowledge, all they should know the fact that I'm just a little bit more masculine than the other girls. And this, it really does. Like it opens up a whole nother other issues where people are questioning who we are and the places we are. And I mean, I'm already having to deal with that in an employment situation where someone pushed me and said I'm not allowed in the bathroom. Like they're trying to do it here at the sports level because they have more footing. And if they start here, then they're going to start trying to push us out of every gendered area where they think that we should not be. And so for athletes, like being a part of that team, growing those relationships with other people that are like-minded, that are the same gender that we most closely identify with, like it is those things that help build that strength and build a lot of times the community that builds just knowing that you have other people that got your back, that agree, or even some that don't, but that are still your teammates and are able to get past it, and just they're there for you, you're there for them, and you learn that community, that it's more than just about me, it's about all of us and being able to help each other, just like a team, just like that. It's picking everyone up, working as one whole unit, and that's what it's going to take for us, especially with this, because I want every trans person in Louisiana to be able to be themselves fully, sports and all, just be themselves without someone else telling them they can't be. And so that's my thing. Be you, be strong, and if you're an athlete, do it. So.
Natalie, thank you for that powerful testimony. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. Thank you again. Next, we're going to pivot to two of my favorite people talking about the healthcare bill, which is HB 570. Clifton Mixon at Ochsner, who is a child and adolescent psychologist in the Gender Medicine Clinic and a provider of gender affirming care, and Dietz at Dietz Consulting LLC, who uses any pronoun with respect, who is a trans health activist that helped develop the first gender affirming healthcare clinic in the state of Louisiana. They're a member and a co-founder of TITLE, the Trans Healthcare Training Collective. The Trans Inclusive Development Agency and Learning MyB, and they're currently acting as an independent trans health consultant via Dietz Consulting LLC. I'll let y'all take it from here. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Elliot. I'm so happy to be here. I wish I could see y'all's faces, but I'm seeing what Nia was talking about with the mirroring here. Anyways, glad to be here to talk about this terrible bill. So as Elliot introduced us, we're talking about HB 570, which is a bill that was brought forward by Gabe Ferment. And they're calling it the SAFE Act, which stands for Save Adolescents from Experimentation. So let's just take a breath right there. All of these bills are rough, but this one really hits home for a lot of us in a different way. Whether you are an adult who wishes that they had access to gender affirming care when you were a teen and want to protect the hard-won access that youth have right now, whether you're a young person or a young person's parent who's actively accessing gender affirming care and are really concerned about what that means about how you're going to move forward, or whether you're a young person who wants to access gender affirming care but hasn't had a chance to yet. I just want to affirm that even though these bills feel big, I believe that collectively we are bigger. And part of what, has been named many times tonight already is that the goal of these bills is for us to be scared of what they could mean. And it's a little confusing right now because there are so many kind of like mimicking bills throughout the country. I want to make sure that we are on the same page about what this bill in our state means and our understanding of the language, even though we don't know exactly how it would roll out if it goes through, which we're going to fight, and hopefully it doesn't. But I'm going to do my best to get on that page, and then Dr. Mixon is going to be talking a little bit more about how we can fight back. So there's 5 different tenets that kind of are covered in this bill, and the most important one, or like kind of the one that's at the forefront, is that for anyone who's under the age of 18 years old, it would remove the access to gender-affirming hormone therapy, gender-affirming surgery, and any kind of pubertal blockers, so hormone blockers, regardless of parental consent. It doesn't matter whether you have one parent or 2 parents who've got your back. There's no like kind of like push that they have or ability to support their young people in accessing gender affirming care. One thing that is, I think, important to pull out, in other states, there have been provisions where parents would be punished if they still supported their young kids, and that does not exist here. So I want to be very clear for parents who might be nervous about that. It does not apply to you. There's other people who might be implicated, but we're going to get to that. So as of right now, kind of the umbrella of behavioral health is a little bit uncertain. And I'm going to, again, let Dr. Clifton talk a little bit more about that. It's not likely to affect counseling outside of the school setting or therapy outside of the school setting. But what it would likely impact is if you had a parent who was a badass and wanted to help you access gender affirming surgery out of state, and you needed your counselor to write a letter of behavioral health clearance so you could access surgery outside of state, this law would prohibit them from being able to do that. So that's the first tenet. Second tenet applies to school. So they say that any nurse, counselor, teacher, principal, or other professional staff would not be allowed to, and this is the bill's language, encourage or coerce a minor to withhold his gender if it's inconsistent with his sex. Interesting that they're very specific about gender here, and they're clearly coming for specifically young trans women. It is very clear who they are targeting here, even though this bill would apply to everybody. So what that means is that it would require any of those people, nurses, counselors, teachers, principals, to out any young trans kid who came out about their identity to their parents. What we already know from the data that we have is that young trans kids are more likely to be expelled from their households for coming out as being trans. They are more likely to experience abuse, even among the other LGBT spectrum or LGB spectrum of cis people. Trans kids are more likely to experience both neglect and physical abuse. So it actually mandating any of those people who are supposed to protect their young people to out their kids to their parents, that doesn't sound like a safe act to me. I know I'm speaking to the choir here, but and some of the other like kind of smaller bits are that it would, right now, we actually have pretty decent coverage via our state Medicaid for young people who are trying to access gender affirming care of all kinds, but it would remove any state or federal funding from being able to be applied for gender affirming care for anyone under the age of 18, or I'm sorry, only state, not federal, but just state. So that would affect Medicaid coverage as well. One of the things that feels the most insidious to me about this bill is that while it removes the ability for a parent to support a young person when they are able to consent to accessing medical care for their body, it very specifically and explicitly allows for gender reassignment surgeries, and I'm going to use that word very intentionally here, reassignment surgeries for young intersex children when they are born. So when it is impossible for a young person to consent, babies can't consent to what happens to their bodies. Parents are allowed to speak up about gender and gender reassignment surgeries. When they are older and are able to consent for themselves and their parents want to support them, that ability to support gender affirming surgery is then removed. And then the last fifth tenet is that any licensure of any of any medical provider who says, no, I'm going to do this anyway. This goes against my moral code, my values. I'm going to do this anyways. They're subject to discipline by their licensing bodies, and we don't know what that means yet. So all of this, all those 5 tenets are supported in the first half of the bill by a whole slew of imaginary science that I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of right now, because I want to leave time for Dr. Mixon to talk about how we fight these things. But if y'all have more questions about like kind of that piece of it or any of the nuances, again, we've got the question and answer that we'll be very happy to answer at the end. And with that, I stand in solidarity and like ready to fight like hell with all of you. And I'm going to pass it off to Dr. Mixon.
Thank you, Dietz, so much. I'm so happy to be here along with my colleague, Dietz, and many other co-conspirators here who are here to try and fight all this bad energy. Dietz did an amazing job summarizing. Just, it doesn't make sense. They want to take things like surgeries against young intersex children who have no ability to consent, and when that is proven to cause harm, they want to make sure that's still okay. And they're likely going to try and protect conversion therapy. So please support Representative Landry's bill as well, too. And yet, when there is evidence for a particular type of care, such as gender affirming care, because it is outside the confines of what they understand about the world, they want to take it away. And so it seems like every step of the way, our enemies just want to harm us and doing everything they can, which is why it's important that we are informed. And so we're here today to try and help you better understand where they are coming from and what we can do to fight it. So, I mean, I just want to first off point out and kind of jump onto a point that Dietz made, that these bills are kind of copied and pasted across the country, right? This is a copy and paste version of HB 1570 that passed in Arkansas last year, which thank God is still held up in the courts and is on pause. I mention this only to highlight how little these politicians actually know about gender affirming care. Clearly, they are invested enough in harming queer and trans youth to bring this legislation, but not invested enough to do their own research and write their own bill. So were they actually to care enough about children as they claim to, and care enough to do their own research, I like to believe that at least some of them would be working with us to protect this care and expand access to it rather than restrict it. So, you know, unfortunately, we're not in that situation, are we, Dietz? No, we're not. So what are we going to do? We're going to educate them. And we're going to ensure that they know the truth, and that if they continue to try and harm trans kids, they do so without a clear conscience. And for those in the middle who are movable, that we can educate them enough to bring them over to our side to agree with us that this care is necessary. So what is gender affirming care? You know, a lot of people I meet in my work have different beliefs what gender affirming care is. You know, this legislation would have you believe that gender affirming care is nothing more than medicines and surgeries. So gender affirming care is so much more than medicine. You know, it is when professionals and important persons treat a person's gender identity with respect, which can be as simple as using their correct name and pronouns. It's about not making our own personal or private assumptions about another person's gender identity, but about allowing them to be the expert in themselves and tell us themselves who they know themselves to be. It involves helping individuals take steps at their own comfort level towards being their most authentic self. And in youth, it also involves family and providers working together to help support the child or adolescent in making the steps towards transition that will help them live as their most authentic selves. It does not involve legislators. True gender affirming care for youth is individualized. And what that means, it can involve gender affirming medication. And so these medical interventions are very helpful, and there's a lot of research to support that, which I'll get to in just a minute. But again, it's unique to the needs of the patient. Not all kids who are transgender or exploring their gender identity or gender diverse need medications to be themselves. In fact, most do not. So it's important that all medical care is tailored to the individual needs of the person instead of a one-size-fits-all approach like they'd have you believe is happening. So I can speak firsthand from my experiences as a child and adolescent psychologist working in a gender medicine clinic, how transformative access to these medications for youth really can be for those who need it. I can tell you story after story about youth who struggled with their own mental health due to not being supported in critical aspects of their identity and transition, due to the discrimination they feel in our society that doesn't see them for themselves, so much so that some of them want to take their own life. And I can tell you stories of the same youth who, after participating in gender affirming care, being supported by their families, for some counseling, gender affirming counseling, and for some medications, and coming back to these happy, healthy, successful children, adolescents who are unrecognizable from how I saw them before receiving this care. I can also tell you about their parents, many of whom who struggled in understanding their child at first and come back to us and tell me, I have never seen my child this happy, this healthy, this confident, and finally able to be comfortable in themselves. They're just so grateful. And while that's all so important, I can also tell you that these stories are supported by decades of established research and guidelines from all major medical and mental health organizations. The jury is in. Living according with one's gender identity is an effective, safe, and medically necessary treatment for youth who are transgender and gender diverse. That's it. So when legislators and people who seek to harm our community try to spread lies and try to tell you that youth cannot know their own gender identity and must be protected from making mistakes and from regret, that gender-affirming care is experimental and unsafe without any benefits, that medicines and surgeries are being delivered to youth irresponsibly, like they're being thrown around like beads at Mardi Gras or something, like you get some gender-affirming medicine, you get some surgeries, here you go. I want you to look at them and tell them some truth, that being transgender is not a phase. Trans youth know themselves as well as cisgender youth do. There is well-established research that this care not only works, but is life-saving and often necessary. That there are already rigorous and well-established standards of care guiding gender-affirming care for youth. That the gender-affirming medical and mental health providers in our state take great care to protect youth and support them and their families through this process. And then when healthcare has this much support for its effectiveness and such little, if any, evidence for harm, that decisions about youth's healthcare needs need to stay between their parents and their doctors, not our legislators. So we will tell them this when we write them letters and emails. We will tell them this when we call, and we will tell them this when we go to Baton Rouge. We will not let them believe for 1 second that what they're trying to do is protect trans youth, because what they want to do is harmful. Those who write this legislation want to take away life-saving care from youth for whom it has done so much good, and for those who could do so much good in the future, from those who can save lives. They want to scare clinics and providers to close their doors and to be afraid to provide this care, already erasing care that is hard to come by. And so what I want you to say to them is say that queer and trans youth is that, what I say to the queer and trans youth of Louisiana when people are trying to do these things in our state is that gender-affirming providers and your queer and trans siblings and parents and brothers and sisters in our community will still be here for you no matter what. Even if they pass this legislation, I promise you will not let that happen without a fight. Your healthcare providers in your community will still be here for you. Even if we lose access to medicines, we will treat you with the respect you deserve and do everything we can to let you live an affirmed life and to be yourself. And no state has successfully passed a bill and had it go into effect yet. So let's not give up hope. You have a big team behind you, but this is a good time for us to pull out all the stops and show up for our kids. And we can do that by calling, writing, texting, voting, and showing up to Baton Rouge to let them know how you feel. That's all I have to say about that.
Round of applause. Holy moly, Clifton, bringing it home. I just, everything that you said, I just feel, and I know we've got more room to go through, but one thing that I think is really important that everybody who's on the call understands is that currently we do not have any surgeons that I am aware of. And up until a month ago, the last 3 years, it was my job to know where surgeons were. We have no surgeons who offer gender affirming surgeries to anybody under the age of 18 right now in the state of Louisiana anyway. So this is a fear mongering bill that is based off of like scaring people into thinking that like genital mutilation is happening while they are actually writing a bill to protect genital mutilation when it's not consensual. It's really, I think, indicative, as Dr. Mixon said, of the lack of awareness of what good gender affirming care looks like. Because I had the privilege to speak to hundreds of young people, like I know you did, over the last 3 years. And very frequently a young person would call and be like, well, first I need this, and then I need that, and then I need that. And actually being able to talk to a trans professional to say, a trans healthcare professional to say, baby, you only need it if you need it, if you feel like it. Like nobody gets to prescribe this to you. I mean, this is like body essentialist, like harm. So, if people want access, they should absolutely have access when it is age appropriate and when their medical providers have made a decision with the patient about safety. And that's all, there are already mechanisms in place for that. You know, anybody who follows WPATH, the World Professional Association of Transgender Health, like the world standards of care, knows this. So this bill, again, like Dr. Mixon said, they're not interested in learning what this actually means. They're just interested in policing our bodies. So I know many more people have things to say, so I'm going to stop. But Natalie, if you can take us home.
Yeah, I'm just like, wow, blown away, just consistently blown away by the brilliance. They just want to police our bodies, but like Clifton said, we have a big team behind us, y'all. Thank y'all so very much for sharing y'all's wisdom. So, beloveds, that was the download on all things healthcare and increasing how we can combat them trying to stop us from having healthcare access to all the folks that need it. We're going to do a pivot to our next bill. And just a reminder that we're going to be answering all the questions that come up in our Mentimeter. You can definitely send them to us. We'll answer them. I'm going to bring up one of my beloveds to talk a little bit about classroom censorship, right? So there's been a lot of talk about all these things, but I'll actually let Sarah Jane do all the talking on this. Hey, Sarah Jane, do you want to tell people who you are? You're awesome. Love you. Mwah.
Hello, I am Sarah Jane Guidry. I am the Executive Director of Forum for Equality. And Forum for Equality is Louisiana's statewide LGBTQ human rights organization. And I want to talk and kind of round out the bad bills that we have here this 2022 legislative session. So when we say classroom censorship, we want to be very clear. So you understand that this is the same bill that is being noted as the Don't Say Gay bill. And the Don't Say Gay bill has popped up in a lot of southern states. Most notably, we've seen the battle in Florida. And then it moved over to Georgia, where it saw a very quick demise. And it has made its way over here to Louisiana. The bill here in Louisiana is different than it was in Florida. And so I want to kind of just overview what this bill is and the impacts that it has. And then I'm going to introduce a couple of other people that are going to come on and talk about it from their perspective. So basically, everyone needs to realize that Representative Dodie Horton's bill, which is HB 837, would effectively erase LGBTQ students, families, and history by banning classroom on sexual orientation and gender identity in kindergarten through 8th, or at any level in which a teacher, educational staff, or presenter discuss their sexual orientation or gender identity. So to clarify that, that means between K and 8, you cannot read a book, you cannot have any discussions or presenter that comes and talks about sexual orientation and gender identity. From that, the second part is meaning that any teacher, educator, staff member, or presenter would be unable to identify their sexual orientation or gender identity all through 12 years of public school. And absolutely not does the Louisiana legislature need to be forcing queer people back into the closet by policing their identity, from stopping kids talking about their same-sex parents. I think we really need to realize how much this bill stigmatizes LGBTQ people, how it isolates LGBTQ kids, and it makes teachers fearful of creating and providing safe and inclusive classrooms. So basically, this bill is intended to erase LGBTQ youth, LGBTQ families, and LGBTQ history. And, you know, this is a trend, right? So we're at the end of all the bad bills that we're discussing that are specifically focused on the queer community. And again, it's focusing on banning parts of who we are, how we live, who our families are, who we love, and how we identify. It's a very, very short bill. It's very vague. That's going to have a very big chilling effect on the support for LGBTQ youth across the state of Louisiana, because it creates such broadly and costly liabilities that we are really unsure of. We know that these powers that they are trying to put into place are going to be weaponized to challenge any progress that we see, or any progress that we have had via school boards, and any policies of inclusion that we have seen in any schools independently. So again, when we say don't say gay, it's very, very important that we realize that this is classroom censorship, right? We do not need elected officials in Baton Rouge telling our school boards, our parents, our teachers, our students what to do, how to learn, how to teach. These outside agendas that we have noticed a trend across the country, these outside agendas have no space in the Pelican State at all. It is blatant government overreach and a way in which these outside agendas are trying to control our students. So we need to stop the culture wars of attacking LGBTQ kids. It is out of line, and we need to leave the youth, the parents, and the educators alone. And so with that, we need to remember that kids should never be political props. And when we see them attacked, we come in full force as we have tonight, as powerfully as we just heard Dietz and Dr. Clifton speak. We are here to stand together to protect the LGBTQ youth, but we also want to uplift their voices, and we also want to support them in this fight. And so last week I had the honor of being at Benjamin Franklin High School when they walked out of their second period in reaction, not just to the classroom censorship bill, but also all the negative bills. And I have to say that of the coalition, the local coalition, many of the people there were so inspired by the ability of these students to collectively, urgently, and rapidly respond. And so I invited Grayson Swearingen to join us this evening, one of the organizers from Ben Franklin, who is a junior, and also is an artist, an animator, filmmaker, and participates in theater as a hobby. And so welcome this evening, Grayson. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Hello, I'm Grayson. I use he, him pronouns. Like they said, I was one of the organizers of the Benjamin Franklin walkout. I would just like to say that as a queer and trans man who has gone to private schools my whole life, aside from high school, finally being able to have queer topics discussed and queer teachers be open and out about their identity in high school has made me so much happier and so much I just get so much joy whenever I see those teachers, and I know that I'm safe when I'm in the classroom with them. The walkout that we staged was during one of my teacher's classes, who is a lesbian and who fought in the protests in the AIDS crisis. And she's extremely supportive, and she just talks about her experiences being a lesbian and adopting a son and living in northern Louisiana for most of her life. She talks about that openly in class, and it makes me feel so much more comfortable. I know it makes other queer students feel so much more comfortable. And it helps so much to be able to see ourselves in our teachers. And for the first time ever, I've had a US history teacher who has taught and talked about and specifically looked for queer history and trans history. We learned about the Stonewall riots last class, and we learned about the gay liberation movement, along with many other movements by people of color and the environmental movement, just so many things. And seeing the queer movement included in all of that, just it makes me so happy. And I know my other queer friend in that class also feels the same way. And that being taken away from us would just like crush so many people. I know that it like took a heavy toll on me in middle school, especially when I just didn't have any teachers who really understood what it was like to be queer, or any other students really aside from underclassmen. And like Sarah Jane said about not being able to talk about having queer parents, while I have a mom and a dad, my dad is queer, and not being able to talk about that would be awful because I love my dad, and I think the reason he's so supportive is because he is queer, and just having to completely ignore that part of him is awful, and it isn't fair to him, and it's not fair to our teachers to have to hide their identities and their stories, and it's not fair to the students to not be able to talk about their identities and not be able to hear about their identities ever in the classroom. And then the anti-trans bills have I've already seen them affect my friends. I'm friends with so many other trans people, and most of them are not on hormones. They haven't gotten gender therapy because their parents they don't respect that they need it. I haven't gotten on hormones. I haven't got gender therapy. But I have friends who have it, and getting off of testosterone or estrogen would seriously damage their mental health. And I know that it's damaged mine and a lot of other people's to not have access to that sort of hormone treatment. And all the stories I've heard from my two friends who have gone on testosterone, it took them years to get on it finally, and to finally get diagnosed with gender dysphoria and be able to medically transition. And they're just now talking about doing things like top surgery. And they're both, I think one of them 17 and the other one is a senior who's 18, who's graduating soon and hasn't been able to get top surgery yet. So it already takes so long to get this gender affirming care that so many trans kids desperately need to feel like themselves and to feel like they can live comfortably and survive. And putting an extra ban on top of that is going to take away so many lives and just make life miserable for so many people. So it's really important to me. It's really important to other people that these bills don't stay in place.
Grayson, thank you so much. I can see we're streaming in 5 or 4 different places, and they are all lit up for you. They're yes, thank you for speaking truth to power, and it's truly such a model for how we all should be and live. Deeply appreciate you. So, beloveds, the next homie we want to bring on is a pioneer, if I do say so myself. I've only had the chance to meet them through the internet, but let me just read a little bit of brilliance for y'all right quick. So Leah Nicole Williams, MSW, put some respect on her name, please, is a licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapist who specializes in providing therapy and mental health support. She intentionally centers on her focus on serving transgender and gender diverse individuals. Alea is also a Black woman of trans experience who has great understanding of the inequity, stress, and mental health concerns that plague her community. She's currently in private practice and pursuing a doctoral degree in social work at Tulane University, with goals to contributing to a greater body of research centering trans and gender diverse experiences. I'm just can we give it up? Can we give it up? Ashe. It's so iconic. It's so epic.
Well, thank you.
I just love you. I'll let you speak.
Well, I was just going to say thank you so much for the love. This is so powerful. It's so powerful to see everyone come out. Grayson, I just want to lift you up and celebrate you along with the youth that are around your age. You all are so dynamic and so unafraid to face things. And that is to be admired and it is to be uplifted. So that's the first thing I want to say. With this rash of recent bills that has been coming out in several states, and I see children, youth across Louisiana. I see adults across Louisiana, Texas, Missouri, Georgia, and so many youth. I see a lot of trans or gender diverse youth. So many of them have been negatively impacted by not even if the bill has necessarily hit their state or whether it's passed or not, but just knowing that these things are out there in existence, which is one of the direct, in my opinion, one of the direct results of their intent with the fear mongering that I heard my boo, I love Deep mentioned earlier, and also Dr. Mixon and Sarah Jane. You know, this is the tactic that they take. And if you think about with the Don't Say Gay bill in particular, the ages that they are attacking right now, these are very formative years. You know, going from kindergarten to third grade, yes, those are formative in terms of development and things like that. But when we're getting into, you know, going into elementary school, you know, junior high, getting prepared for high school, these are very socially formative years. These are where we are forming our identities and how people perceive us, whether we make friends, the type of friends we make, the things we like, all the things that any kid should be enjoying at that age. And yet, you know, our legislation has decided to jump on the bandwagon and start attacking you. And that is, in my opinion, another strategy to not only attack, but also just completely break down what it is to be a part of our community. When we talk about the effects of stigma, we know that they have dire psychological consequences. You know, that increases the presence of hopelessness, helplessness. It decreases a sense of individual and social safety. And also then that decreases rates of, you know, depression and, heaven forbid, suicidality. And so when you inflict these things on an already vulnerable population such as ours, how do you think that would then impact our social determinants of health, which are already pretty shaky as it begins with? So this foot in the door type of, okay, we're going to start with sports and then we're going to go on to medical care. Oh, now you can't even say anything about gender identity. It goes back to the word that stuck out to me that I've heard in so many other people's presentations, and that word is erasure. And when you erase someone, when you communicate to them that their experiences don't matter, when you communicate to them that, you know, yeah, you can be who you are, but you need to keep that quiet. What does that say about that person's self-worth? How would that then impact that child's ability to live and function and want to thrive? It will make a child feel as though, or a youth feel as though, what's the point? What am I fighting for? But that's where we come in. We come in doing things like this. We come in and building and bridging together and working with us in our own conjunctions with each other and using our strengths and assets and coming together and showing our youth that, hey, we know it's rough and you shouldn't have to be fighting this fight, but we want you to know you're not fighting this fight alone. And we need to do that at every turn. My other thing that I really want to touch on is something that I heard Deets mention earlier, and that was some of the consequences that haven't clearly been defined yet as far as what providers and professionals might face should we so choose to administer treatment to gender diverse youth or trans youth. My own personal standpoint on it from a clinician's point of view is I'm not agreeing to it. I'm going to fight it. I encourage anyone else who takes that standpoint to get into contact, if you're not, with your professional governing body. For social work is the NASW, the National Association of Social Workers. My profession within itself automatically fights injustice. So a lot of these bills are contradictory to what my profession stands for. And if we look at any other profession in the helping profession or in healthcare, it's pretty much the same across the board. So I encourage and I implore any provider that feels and knows in their heart that these bills are wrong to use your voice, stand up, still see these populations. And the last thing I want to add is this, and then I'm going to toss it back over to you, Neil. When we talk about providing health care and services to youth, yes, a lot of youth do need to come specifically for, you know, things related to gender identity. But we also have to understand that there are several nuances that come along with everyday life. And so the focus of therapy for me when I'm working with youth is not always going to be just their gender identity. They're a whole being. And what these bills are doing is depriving them of even accessing that. And we have to continue to fight that.
and we have to continue to fight that. You better speak, Alea. Oh, I'm so deeply thankful for you. So deeply thankful for you. So, fam, you just heard from all of the professionals. You heard from healthcare professionals. You heard from trans professionals, trans athletes, trans young folks. We've given you all types of experiences, both from the professional side and from the life side. So before we move into our next section, I just want to give us 30 seconds to breathe. Let that sink in, like seasoning. Let that wisdom hit you in a particular type of way. Yeah. Thank you, fam, for giving us a moment of pause. So we've talked about all of the bills that are specifically coming for trans and queer youth, but we know that our work isn't just about the ones that are targeting us, because whenever they're targeting us, they're targeting a bunch of other people too, right? And so we have a few bills that we want to have y'all be on the lookout for. And the reason why we're talking about these bills too is because their attack on reproductive rights is an attack on trans rights. Attack on Black folks is an attack on trans folks, because there are Black folks who are trans. So the next few bills that we're going to talk about are an attempt for us to build solidarity across issues, and to remind ourselves that there's no one person can be free if we aren't all free. With that being said, I'll invite my beloved Pearl into the stage to come and share with us some wisdom. Oh, yes, you just look so good.
I know, it's different from earlier. Earlier I was still in prep mode. Awesome. Well, I hope everyone can hear me well. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm happy to be a part of the amazing work that's going on within this coalition, and that being LoCall, and also within this event. My name is Pro Ricks. My pronouns are they and them, and I am the executive director and a co-founder of the Reproductive Justice Action Collective. We are founded with the understanding that we all have a right to live our lives authentically. We all have a will and we have a way, but that way is extremely filled with obstacles, and we deserve better. So when we apply a reproductive justice lens, we acknowledge that we need full access and on-demand access to the following: a right to live authentically with our bodies, how we choose with how we make our decisions, and make sure that all decisions and opportunities are available to us with healthy and whole options, a right to be pregnant if we wish, and to be offered healthy and whole options for that experience, a right not to be pregnant and to be offered healthy and whole options for that experience, a right to our environment, so having a right to the proper environment and conditions for our personal experiences, and also a right to bodily autonomy, gender identity, and sexual pleasure. So it's always important for me to set that as a baseline, because we are REJAC, or the Reproductive Justice Action Collective. And it's important to understand that all of these different pieces of social justice and social injustice issues that we're talking about tonight aren't really different. They're all interconnected and they all fall under an umbrella. So I'm very happy to be here to add and support all of this. I also would like to give a special shout out to the youth, because I was at the walkout and I've just been paying attention to a lot of young leaders and organizers through social media, virtually, and you're all amazing. And I'm really happy to have your leadership and to be led by you all, and really pleased to be in this space. So you can find REJAC flexing one of the many things that we do by providing Orleans and Jefferson Parish folks with free and by donation emergency contraception with our EC packs. And that is a program that would be impossible without our volunteers. We offer Can I Get an Abortion in Louisiana.com and a sexual and reproductive health scene that is written at a 4th grade level. You can find it at New Orleans Public Libraries, and you can find it online. It's available in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese, and it's at the bottom of our website, rejacnola.org. So you'll learn along the way as you scroll towards the bottom. Today, REJAC is flexing our advocacy, issue education, and civic engagement arm. We want everyone to know and want to join in the call that discrimination cannot live here. It cannot live in Louisiana. It doesn't have a place. As a state and as a people, we already experience a lot of disaster. We experience a lot of pain. And when you start to fine-tune that and you go into the many pockets of marginalized groups, youth, adults, intergenerationally across the spectrum of being trans or being gay, lesbian, intersex, the list goes on. It impacts all of these folks, and we already have too many struggles. So I want to lay some context after I read some language from the bills I'll be talking about. The language will help because I truly believe that just like the SAFE Act or HB 570, there's language meant to confuse. There's language meant to manipulate, and there's language meant to make people feel like they're doing the right thing when in all reality, we are harming our youth and fellow Louisianans. So House Bill number 747 by Representative Ray Garofalo. The little blurb that goes with it is under curricula, and it requires instruction on the I have a dream speech and prohibits including certain concepts regarding sex, race, ethnicity, and national origin in content standards, curricula, textbooks, and staff professional development programs. So one, I'd like for us all to sit with the fact that it's called the I have a dream, right? That's what they're leading with. And within the language, they actually start to dismantle the protections and the dreams of not only the history that we have, but our youth. Also in an environment where we have folks banning books across the South, this puts into risk the language that we already have in our schools and the curriculums that we already have in our schools. In the language, it makes it sound like we would have more access, or this language would provide more access to information, but that is not true. Nestled into the bill language, you will find the following. No public school governing authority shall adopt or purchase any curricula, textbook, or instructional materials, or staff professional development trainings, or resources that provide a particular sex, race, ethnicity, or national origin is inherently superior, inferior, advantage, disadvantage, privileged, underprivileged, biased, or oppressed relative to another. Reference to this prohibition shall be included in any request for proposal for curricula, textbooks, instructional materials, or staff professional development trainings, or resources, and in any contract for the purchase thereof. And it starts to go on. It also covers that staff professional development trainings, resources that provide any information regarding sex, race, ethnicity, or national origin, and not only stating that it's inherently superior or inferior to another, which is rocky land, but making that comparison, which is where the learning starts. It's not just the point that a group is disadvantaged or systemically disempowered, or even that another group holds privilege, but we need the other side to create that context and to create that correlation for learning. So it completely demolishes that. I'll go into the different groups that it impacts when I start talking about some of the context and the texture. I find that part a little more exciting. So we're going to go over the stale bits right now. So that was HB 747 by Representative Ray Garofalo. And now I will explain House Bill 837 by Representative D. Horton. And the blurb under that reads, it provides relative to discussion of sexual orientation and gender in public schools. It's relative to public school teachers and personnel and prohibits classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity in certain grade levels. To prohibit teachers and others from discussing their sexual orientation or gender identity with students, and to provide for related matters. No teacher, school employee, or other presenter shall cover the topics of sexual orientation or gender identity in any classroom discussion or instruction in kindergarten through 8th grade or through grade 8. No teacher, school employee, or other presenter shall discuss his own, once again, gendered language, deets, shout out. No teacher, school employee, or other presenter shall discuss his own sexual orientation or gender identity with students in kindergarten through grade 12. So I want to take a breath. I'd like for us all to take a breath and let the information sink in, but any bad feelings that it brings, let it go as we return to the space where we are learning and communicating and organizing with each other. So all of the legislation that is being presented tonight really hinges on information and knowledge. if they can shut down the conversation, then you won't have the facts. The legislation and the language that is presented today, especially SB 44, HB 570, HB 747, and my notes are gone, pardon me. Oh, yes, HB 837. They're filled with disinformation, misinformation. They're led by being uninformed. This language wants to have the groundwork to make that acceptable, to make it so there is no one who is being impacted by this legislation that is possibly able to speak up within the spaces that they're sent to learn, where they're sent to learn how to advocate for themselves and their community members, and within the spaces where they're meant to flourish and be themselves, that being our young people and people who are in school. I also would like to call attention to the fact that youth are inquisitive, people are inquisitive, and language like this, you know, I always have images that come to my head. So I imagine that someone walks up to their teacher, they walk up to their educator, and it's someone that they see most of the week, someone who helps them navigate life, someone who is the educator, the therapist, the friend, the lesson learner, the collaborator with whatever parents and caregivers. And they have this connection. And a young person asks them about themselves. What is your wife like? What is your husband like? What is your partner like? And creating an environment where that connection is not able to happen. That connection is not able to thrive. And the space and the safeness of school is called into challenge and thrown in the balance because of this. So I think it's very important that we don't get too caught up in the words and forget that there's context and there's nuance and there are real people and real experiences and real connections that are part of this. So what do we need? I can talk from my experience and also speak with the experience and the understanding of the stories of others. We need legislature to understand that students are the experts on their experiences and that it's great and fantastic and encouraged to show their civic and their social power. We need to ensure that we have abundant resources in terms of learning and in terms of loving. Legislators want to control what happens in our homes and how we parent. Bills like the ones talked about tonight are interconnected, and they aim to put parents, educators, caregivers, and community members across, I say this word a lot, intergenerational, because it truly is any age's game. But across an intergenerational spectrum, it puts them at risk for criminalization and puts them under state restriction. And that state restriction is led and curated by misinformation and disinformation and uninformed legislators when it comes to these bad bills that we speak about tonight. The legislation that's presented tonight also impacts multiple communities. Transgender, non-conforming, gender expansive, Black communities, Latinx communities, Asian communities, Indigenous communities, Jewish communities, Islamic communities. There is so much more than folks will allow you to see. If they're only looking at the tip of that iceberg, then what is the full picture? Who is everyone who is impacted? I bring that up because I want us to know how truly interconnected we are in all of these issues, especially when it pertains to us learning about what is happening, whether it be historical, whether it be something in the present, or whether it be theory that moves us forward and moves us towards healing and moves us towards liberation. So another way that this legislation harms us is that it's providing a landscape that makes it criminal to teach or provide information that includes all histories and experiences that make Louisiana rich. This legislation is harmful because it takes a stab at the very fabric of us as a community, of us as a state, and of myself as an individual, of you as an individual, and also of the people that you love. They want to limit the ability for us to live our lives freely and advocate for each other. When it comes to the banning of specific theory within classrooms, history within classrooms, I think something that we can all agree on is that we can find a way together to tell hard truths about the country's past, about the state's past, our respective cities and parishes past, and present it in order to prepare young people to be a part of a better future than was experienced back then, a better world that is experienced now, and to truly lean in to their dreaming, lean into their futures. We talk about children, students, young people being our future, but that only works when we prepare and support them to do better than we have, and to have the information and tools to help them reshape stronger, healthier communities where we all feel respected and have an opportunity to succeed and thrive and learn about one another's histories. We all want young people to care about themselves, but we need to make sure that they have the ability to do so. We need to ensure that they have the ability to live lives as healthy individuals, and also the ability to contribute to that better world. Parents and co-parents and community members alike dream big for our children in different ripples that are different sizes. We all have dreams for the youth, the students, the children, the parents, the gardener, everyone in our communities. But that only works if we help them to not only achieve those goals, but also tear down obstacles that have been created for those others in our communities, or for the people that have experiences like ours, and ensure that everyone has the same opportunities.
It's from like, you just laid so much wisdom on us, and I'm like, this is why we need to be having conversations across issue. Thank you so very much, beloved. Deeply appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. You're welcome. You know what? Let me make sure. Let me just check something real quick before you go.
Let me know.
Because, you know, I'm going to skip a couple things. Okay. I just want to share that this language is not just harmful, but it adds to dangerous rhetoric, hateful speech, and it creates an environment in which that can flourish. Most of the language we're speaking about tonight not only creates a pathway to discrimination, but it also creates a reward system for discrimination. It creates a deputization of individuals in our community. And it means that we're enforcing laws that are unnecessary upon each other, instead of living and being able to focus on how we need to reclaim our rights and protect those that are there. So I wanted to make sure I tied it in with that, and wanted to make sure that I let you know I feel as though creating and fostering an environment where bullying and discrimination towards some of our youngest residents, that's not a world that we want to create. That's not the Louisiana that I want to live in, that I want you to live in. So I appreciate everyone being here, and I call you to get active, to call, email, message and pigeon, anything you need to do our legislators, and let them know you ain't gonna stand for it. Have a good night.
Yes, vocals, yes.
Thanks, babe.
I also will always advocate for you taking some space to tell us that, we do not, this is not the Louisiana that we want to live in. Tell the legislators that this is not what Louisiana should look like, honey. Thank you so much, Paul, for reminding us on how dangerous this language is and who it incentivizes and who it comes for. So yeah, y'all, we have two more bills that we want to, we have three more things that we want to highlight for folks. But the good thing is that two of the final two bills are great things and things that we want to uplift and amplify. And so I'll transition to one of our last bills that we are just like, boo, tomato. We don't want it. So I'll call Morgan into the space, and just a little bit on Morgan. Hey, Morgan. Oh, hey, Morgan.
Hey.
It's so fun. Funny enough, this is Morgan, y'all. Morgan's the Louisiana Coalition for Reproductive Freedom. Morgan is a queer mom and reproductive justice advocate. She's a consultant working with advocacy groups around the country to push for real and lasting change on issues from paid leave and nutritional assistance to abortion access and birth equity. Thank you so much, Morgan, for joining us. And just a little shout out. Next week, you can see Morgan and some of the folks in community with Morgan talk some more about these issues too. So I'll let you do your thing.
Well, so excited to join you. Speaking of being a queer mom, watch out. There might be little people behind me at any moment. It's bedtime in my house right now. So all kinds of shouting, not at legislators, but at me, could be happening at any moment. But I'm really excited to join you all to represent the team at the Louisiana Coalition for Reproductive Freedom. We are so proud to be working in community with all the amazing groups who are talking tonight to really work towards a more just, fair, equitable, liberated Louisiana and the whole damn country, right? And really at the core, reproductive rights, health and justice are so intrinsically linked to LGBTQ equality and trans liberation. It's all about that we get to make the decisions with the support of the people that we love and with our community and with the knowledge of who we are and what we believe about our healthcare, about our bodies, about what our families look like, our relationships look like, our futures look like. And it's all under attack a lot of the time. But we do get to leverage our collective strength and be in movement together to fight back. And that is a power that cannot be stopped. They might have temporary victories here and there, but we cannot be stopped. And so I'm so excited to be with you all and to really dig into that idea that trans liberation, repro rights, it's all together. It's all connected about empowered futures with dignity. And we've got a whole slew of attacks that are happening in the Louisiana legislature right now. I'm just going to call out a couple because I also want to talk about a couple positive bills that are happening. So there is a House Bill 388 that's directly going after access to abortion pills, or what's sometimes called medication abortion. And there's a reason for that. There are so many creative, insidious, harmful restrictions already on the books in Louisiana, across the region, across the country, that have really gone at access to care in clinics. So going and seeking care with health professionals in the clinic setting. And now they're coming after the idea of being able to get those pills and self-manage an abortion. We're seeing it in Texas, where they have all but cut off access and are now trying to go after pills. Folks are coming into Louisiana and getting care here, getting care in other places in the region, and now they're going after access to those abortion pills. And so that's not just about healthcare. It's also about going after that concept that we get to manage our own bodies, again, self-managed abortion. And so we need to be fighting against this legislation. Another attack on the kind of healthcare, whether it's gender affirming or the abortion pill. You decide the healthcare you need. You decide the future for your body. Another really scary bill that we want to make sure we're speaking out together on is a Texas copycat. So Senate Bill 8 has been in the news a lot. We've been talking about it. And this is the Texas bill that does ban abortion very early in pregnancy, before many people even know they are pregnant, and also creates a sort of bounty hunter system where folks can file civil lawsuits for helping someone to get an abortion. So speak of the devil, here's one of my little people. I promise I'm parenting for the resistance. We talk about abortion, we talk about trans liberation, and right now we're going to talk about the need to go up to bed. So mommy
I can't see anyone.
You're not supposed to. I'm talking on right now. Okay, so go do your thing, darling.
Oh,
So good night, honey. All right. So anywho, back to House Bill 800. So it also has the similar structure to what's happening in Texas, where a person who counsels someone on their abortion options, an abortion fund who helps make sure that financial barriers do not prevent someone from getting abortion care, a person who brings a friend, loved one, neighbor to an abortion clinic. Any of these folks could get caught up in this discriminatory, harmful dragnet that's being created. And this is really important to think of from the perspective of that interconnectedness to trans liberation, because again, it's criminalization. It's criminalizing healthcare. It's policing our bodies. And that is a problem to begin with. But when you layer on the fact that we know who is hurt most by this, we know that mass incarceration is harming low-income folks, communities of color. We know it's Black, Indigenous, and people of color who are getting caught up in criminalization and policing of our bodies and our healthcare, most of all. So this is an injustice across the board, including this is a real issue that we must reckon with when it comes to any kind of health equity and racial equality. So those are a couple of the large number of attacks that we're looking at this year when it comes to reproductive health rights and justice related to things like contraception and abortion care. but there's some good stuff too. And I will say, if you want to see more about the bills that we are opposing, you can go to louisianarepro.org. We've got a legislative tracker. We've got a legislative guide. You can visit all of our social media channels. We will have calls to action from LCRF and all of our incredible members, including like the Rejack. Loved seeing Pearl talk. They're always inspiring. And you can learn more about those bills we're opposing, but there's a couple really good bills too. HB 557 is going to expand access to contraception and get rid of some of the barriers that exist by allowing for folks to get a 12-month supply of contraception at a time. Folks don't have to make that trip. They don't have to pay that copay every month. They don't have to deal with transportation hurdles. So this is like an abortion justice, transportation justice bill. There's also House Bill 520, which is being championed by STAR. And this is a bill related to making sure that if someone is a survivor of sexual violence, that they have access to emergency contraception. Such an important bill to ensure that if someone is trying to heal from that kind of violence and trauma, that they get to make the decision to access emergency contraception, that they have that affirmative access to be able to try to heal and move forward with their lives and have that regain that control over their bodies and their futures. And a really fantastic bill too is 516. And this is a bill specifically supporting pregnant and parenting young people in schools. So we talk a lot about being able to control our futures, plan our families, and that includes supporting young parents. So there's so much stigma that is placed on young parents and so many extra hurdles. And I will tell you, I'm not a terribly young parent, as you can see from the crow's feet, but being a parent is really difficult. When you add the obstacle of stigma and trying to complete your education to better yourself, to be able to fulfill your goals, to be able to have opportunities and financial stability for your family. And there are so many barriers to young people in education who are young parents trying to who are pregnant and parenting young folks. And so this bill will provide some support in that area. So important, such a wonderful reproductive justice issue, and such a great way to build healthier and strong communities. So instead of going after the care people need, instead of attacking the rights of trans, gender nonconforming, and gender expansive young people, how about we do more to support them? And that's a great example of that. And as I wrap up my time, because I know there's people with far more interesting things to say, and there's lots of good things to be shared tonight, I do also just want to point out that in addition to what's happening in state legislatures and good old Congress, we also need to be keeping an eye when it comes to that link and that intersection between reproductive health rights and justice and LGBT equality and trans liberation to the Supreme Court decision that will be coming up in a few months in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health. And while the case itself revolves around a Mississippi-based abortion ban, a 15-week abortion ban, which is a very important question around Roe and the future of Roe and the right to abortion, it's bigger than that, because the cases that really establish the foundation for Roe and for other subsequent cases and prior cases like Griswold, which gave access to contraception, they are the same cases that really affirmed and dug in on this concept of the right to privacy. And this is also where we got the rulings for marriage equality. This is also where a lot of state and federal courts really lean on in cases around LGBTQ equality and liberation, is this idea of the right to privacy and this idea of the protection and the constitutional protection for decisions about our bodies, about our families, about our futures. And so this isn't just a threat to Roe, which has already been seriously undermined by all the restrictions that exist. You know, the right to abortion may still be there, but access to abortion has been taken away from many, many folks in Louisiana, particularly those who are pushed to the margins by systemic oppression. But this case is so much bigger than abortion and Roe. This is really going to be a big question around, you know, the right to privacy. And so we should all be paying attention. And the Louisiana Coalition for Reproductive Freedom, all of our members and our partners across the region and the country will certainly be keeping people informed on that decision. and on not just sort of the political work that will happen, no matter good, bad, or ugly comes out of that, but also the real need that there will be for community organizing work, for mutual aid work, because we know, again, that any additional limitations that are put on access to reproductive health care, to gender affirming care, to any care, to information is going to fall hardest on those who are already hurt in our systems and hurt by the status quo and the systemic inequality that exists rampantly in every sector. So lots of work to do, but I will say I remain so confident and so inspired because of conversations like this one tonight. You know, we are coming together and leveraging our collective strength, and there's such meaning and power in that, and we're going to have to keep that up. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. And I am so heartened that I get to do it with incredible people like the folks that are on tonight, the people that are listening tonight, the folks that will watch it later, and the folks across Louisiana and across the nation who are paying attention, who are speaking up, showing up time and again for all forms of justice and liberation. And I will keep on being in it with you. And when the little people come climbing out of bedtime, I'll keep talking to them about what they need to be doing for the future too. So thanks so much for giving LCRF some of this time. Thanks in advance for speaking out against some of the attacks that we're seeing on reproductive health rights and justice. And we are so proud to be in this with you.
Yes, Morgan, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I am still confident and inspired. I think that is a whole gospel.
Well, thank you. I try. And so, you know, you can keep on learning more and hearing from a lot of the folks who are on tonight. So on April 11th, you can go to our Louisiana Repro Facebook. So just facebook.com/Louisiana Repro. We try to keep it easy. And we're going to have a spotlight. So a panel of a bunch of the leaders that are on tonight talking about trans liberation issues. And then on the 19th, we will have one with the folks from Lift Louisiana and STAR, digging in a little bit more on some of those bills, the ugly ones and the pretty ones, that we are working to advance around reproductive health and rights issues. And we'll just keep trying to inform. We just did a great one on Crown Act. We're trying to keep you informed and inspired. And I mean, hey, when you got folks like Nia with you, I mean, you got it. Like, the bar is high. The bar is high. The energy level is high. I drank a lot of coffee. I mean, the bar was high.
Yes, no, I do tend to come in kicking and screaming. Oh my God, no. So April 11th and April 19th, y'all heard the dates, y'all. Make sure.
Yes, Facebook Live, watch it live or come watch it later. We know you got busy lives because you're out there advocating, right?
Ashay, you're doing the work out there. Thank you so much, Morgan. I do appreciate you holding space with us. So, y'all, we've talked about all the bills that are coming for us. They're trying to take us off, but they could never take us off. We have given you so many layouts. And so the last things we want to talk about are just some of the good bills, right? We wanted to sandwich it. We started with some good stuff. We talked about all of the tomato stuff that we cannot stand. And we want to sandwich it with some good stuff too, right? So one of the first bills we want to talk about is the Crown Act. You just heard Morgan talk about it. It's HB 41 and it's sponsored by Representative Candace Newell, And the Crown Act basically builds upon some of the earlier existing non-discrimination acts. And so it basically extends things like race, non-discrimination acts around race, race and heritage to extend into the housing, employment, public accommodations, and education. So it takes things like race and lets folks know that the traits that are associated with race cannot be discriminated against. So that includes hair, skin tone, physical features, all the beautiful things, right? And so this is a celebration because we know people's hair, the way people look and exist have traditionally been discriminated against and kind of targeted. And so HB 41 takes it a step further by saying, just because you're saying, it also, specifically says, you cannot just attack someone based on their physical descriptions, their race, what their hair looks like, what physical features they might have. And that is HB 41 by Representative Candace Newell. So we are lifting it up. We want more of it. We want more things that actually get specific on how you can come for us. So that's one of our bills, our beloved bills. I'm going to pass it on to Corinne Green, who's going to talk about another bill. Hey, Corinne, can you introduce?
Hey folks, I'm Corinne Green. I use she or they pronouns. I am the policy and legislative strategist at Equality Federation, which is a national group that provides support to state queer advocacy organizations in Louisiana. Both Forum for Equality and Louisiana Trans Advocates are members. I'm actually also the former president of Louisiana Trans Advocates. And so one of the things I wanted to bring into this space is I guess, have y'all heard the saying, when they go low, we go high? I'm not here to comment on like whether that works or not. But what I do know what works is when they go narrow, we go wide. And that's one of the things that I love about being part of the queer community. They attack trans youth. They find that that's where they can fearmonger the most. We build stronger, broader communities cross issue. And so one thing that folks may not know is that Louisiana Trans Advocates has been very involved in the drug policy and harm reduction space in the past. That's one of the areas where the rubber really hits the road in terms of queerphobic policing, racist policing. Interacting with and trying to interfere with that drug war keeps our people safe. And we know that queer folks are also disproportionately at risk for overdose. Our mental health isn't always the best because of the discrimination we face. And so these intersections are a place that I really enjoy working in. And you may not know this, but Louisiana Trans Advocates actually is the group behind the legalization of naloxone in Louisiana in 2016. We wrote and ran that bill to make legal to possess and administer this magic overdose drug that can just save people's lives immediately as they're overdosing. And so I wanted to check in and report on a bill that I've filed with Representative Hughes from New Orleans this year that would go a little bit further in that drug policy space and try to keep people out of our carceral systems whenever possible and encourage folks to do the right thing to help them seek help for their friends and family when they overdose. I don't know a single person in my chosen community, my chosen family, my queer community who has not been affected by an overdose or who's not been had an overdose affect their life or someone they know. And so I filed with Representative Hughes HB 601, which is a bill that would reform our Good Samaritan overdose law. We know that when folks call for help for someone with an overdose, a lot of the time what happens is police show up at the scene rather than just medical providers. And then those police look around for anything they can to pop someone who was really just trying to get help for their friend and send them into the carceral system. And so that happens all the time, and it unfortunately can dissuade folks from calling for help for someone who's overdosed. And so HB 601, this bill that I'm working on, expands our existing Good Samaritan law for people who call 911, who call for medical help, for people who overdose in the state. It would protect people not just from prosecution, but also arrest. So cops can't just take in everybody at the scene and find something to pin them for later. And it would also expand the list of kind of smaller crimes for which folks would be immune from arrest if they called for help for someone at the scene of the crime. So right now, if you call for help for your friend who overdosed, you can still be convicted of possession of an illegal substance or possession of paraphernalia. And these are things that dissuade folks from calling for help, and that's not acceptable. We have to keep our people safe. So this bill would make it so that you couldn't be popped for a paraphernalia charge or a possession charge if you called for help for someone who overdosed. It also would expand the protection to prevent several additional negative outcomes. So not just arrest for something like that at the scene, but also penalties for violation of protective or restraining orders. So if you have something like that out against you, you might be dissuaded from calling for help for somebody who's overdosed. And that's not acceptable if you're just trying to do the right thing. It would also prevent you from being punished for violations of parole, pretrial release, anything like that. If you're out on parole, you should not have to go through these extra steps of thinking about, well, I really want to save this person's life, but I can't go back to prison. These are just not choices that we want to put our community through. It also expands the number of people who would be covered at the scene. And so it wouldn't just be the one person calling for help. It could be several people if they're all together. People could all stay there and make sure that the person is okay until help arrives. And it further allows the fact that someone sought medical assistance for an overdose victim to be used as a mitigating factor in prosecutions for which immunity would not be provided. So if the cops were able to find something else to go after someone for, the judge would be able to consider the fact that they were only picked up because they called for help as a mitigating factor and potentially impose a lesser sentence because of that. And so I think that this is an issue that is really important for our community, especially in a state like Louisiana, where we are still having conversations on an ongoing basis to push forward bills that explicitly protect the LGBT community. This area of interaction with the prison system, with the drug war, is one place that we can make concrete differences for our folks in our lives right now. So as we're having conversations with what might be, could be, has been a multi-year plan to secure non-discrimination protections in employment and housing, really, really thankful to the folks who've introduced those bills this year. While we're working on that, I know that we can make concrete improvements in folks' lives right now by working in these intersectional areas. And so just to highlight a couple other bills that are working in this area, if this is something that interests you, there's HB 775, which would decriminalize all drug paraphernalia that's only used for marijuana. So you couldn't just be picked up for having like a bong or something, which is absurd. There is also HB 629, which would prevent the odor of marijuana alone from being justification for a warrantless search. And furthermore, HB 212 would decriminalize fentanyl test strips. And so as folks know, the opioid supply has been contaminated with a very, very strong opioid called fentanyl, which has resulted in increased overdoses as drugs are cut with it. And so if you or someone you love does use drugs, it really is imperative that they test those drugs to make sure they don't contain fentanyl, and so that they're not surprised and accidentally overdose because of it. It is absurd that these tools that people can use to make sure that their drugs are not incredibly dangerous be legal and available and distributed as widely as possible. So those are a couple other bills to pay attention to in this space. If you are like me, and like I know everybody else is here, interested in protecting our community, protecting our friends and family, keeping folks out of the criminal justice system, those are some bills to watch. And so while you're in the halls of the Capitol for our issues, make sure you're on the lookout for kind of these intersectional cross-section of issues that you can make your voice heard on. I've got my email address here if you'd like to connect and work further on kind of this drug policy harm reduction space. I've already been working with folks from Tri-Stereo Harm Reduction Collective New Orleans, folks in Lafayette doing harm reduction work, folks in North Louisiana, No Voters Baton Rouge, the Promise of Justice Initiative. Really, really appreciate everybody coming together kind of to work with each other on all of our issues to keep our communities safe. So I know we've been going for a while. I will absolutely let folks carry on, but really, really appreciate the space. And again, this is the thing that I love about the queer community, is how intentional we are at banding together and sticking together and not just isolating and siloing. Thanks so much, Natalie.
No, thank you, Corinne. Such a blessing to receive so much wisdom. And yeah, the best beautiful thing about this is that it's deeply recorded. And so folks will be able to return to this the more and more that they want to know more about these things. So we are about to move into our call. So here's where we're at, right, beloveds? We talked about the bills. You know what's happening. You know why they've like manifested and what we have to do and why they're messed up. So we want to share a few of the things that we can do to stop those bills, right? And so we have a really dope thing going on right now. It's our little link tree. So we'll move on to that and we want to show folks. So you can go to find out ways to stay involved. Let me see. There we go. There's a little buddy right here. There are a plethora of ways in which we want to stay involved. And I'm going to share my screen to just kind of go over a few of them. Going over the things. Perfect. Here we go. So this is what's going to pop up when you go to that website, right? We talked about the town hall on April 11th. So make sure you come through to that and so you can learn more. When you click it, it takes you straight to the Facebook page. There you go. Bow, bow, bow. So you're also able to sign up for a phone stop. On 4/12, which is next Tuesday, we're going to ask folks to sign up to call their legislators, particularly for the folks in the House Education Committee. So it's super simple, y'all. All you have to do, it just takes 5 minutes. You can do this so easily. And it doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter where you at. All you do is take your name, you put your information there, you pick a time, and there's 2 different slots that we want folks to sign up for. One for Representative Freeberg and one for Representative Hilferty. And there's a pretty cool, dope script. It takes literally, you can email them and you can call them. There's a script, everything is set up for you. All you have to do is sign up for the time. So all the instructions are right there. And this is happening on Tuesday. So please sign up tonight, tomorrow, all the way up until Tuesday, and it goes down then, right? Shout out to the Real Name campaign for helping us to organize this. Special shout out to Quest. So there are a few other ways, beloveds, that we can share. Oops, did I just... Sorry about that. Anaya, do you want to talk about transfer and facilitation? Anaya, do you want to talk? Yeah, let's bring Anaya up to talk a little bit about.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Hello. Hi.
Hello.
This is like so exciting. Oh my God, I feel so pretty. Okay, so yeah, I can talk a little bit about Pride Day at the Capitol. So, first off, Anaya, she, they. The South has actually the largest population of queer and trans people. And we really want to celebrate that at what we are calling Pride Day at the Capitol. So it's going to be an in-person all-day event on April 27th with a virtual advocacy training the night before, April 26th at 6 p.m. And so basically, yeah, my cat's like all up in the screen, y'all. I guess like she also really loves advocacy. But basically, folks from across the state are going to gather in Baton Rouge to build community and share their experiences with lawmakers. It is free, but we really, really want people to register for it because we are going to be having transportation for folks who need it. We're going to have buses coming from every part of the state. So please let us know through the registration form if that's something that you need so we can coordinate that for you. We're also going to have catered breakfast and lunch and snacky snacks because those are important. And we're also going to have really cute t-shirts because who doesn't love a cute t-shirt? So no worries if you're not able to make it to Baton Rouge that day, just come and join us virtually the night before because we really want to make sure that our community, our people have the tools and the support that they need to be at the Capitol and share their stories. So I love you so much. I'm so proud of you. You're doing amazing and you're so worthy of good things. And I'm just really honored that I get to do this work with you and for you. So I guess I can turn it back over to Nia.
Hey, that was beautiful. That was brilliant. That's everything that we needed. Y'all don't forget, the training is happening on the 26th and it goes down at the Capitol on the 27th.
Yes,
Thank you, Anaya. And Anaya is going to come back very quickly and answer a question for us. But I just wanted to show folks one last time what it looks like. So we have this beautiful link tree, right? And there are a bunch of different ways for folks to get involved. And so basically, if you want to go to the Capitol and you might need support getting to the Capitol, or if you can give support getting to the Capitol, you'll click this. It'll just take you right to Q&A, right? Or to a quick little like information form. You want to sign up for the Phones app, you click right there. If you want to testify at the Capitol, you just click this right here. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Awesome. So those are just a few of the many ways in which we can get involved. And in fact, tomorrow there's an opportunity for folks who can to be involved too. The sports ban bill is being heard, and we're all trying to go to the Capitol to just make sure that that there's representation for opposition, right? And so if folks can get there, if you're able to, please do come through. We're going to try and get there in the morning and do show up and be in opposition to it. If you can't, there are a bunch of different ways in which you can be involved. You can call, what's our beloved's names? Is it Mizell? Can call their office. You can do right for the hearing. There are a bunch of ways in which you can show up. But tomorrow, it all goes down. So I think we talked about a bunch of call to actions. We talked about all of the different things that are coming for us. And I know it's getting late, so folks, please leave as you need. That's why we record this. We would love for you to stay with us, but please leave as you need to. And please feel free to return back to this recording for some of the answers to some of the questions that have been dropped over the last hour or so. So I'll transition us into the Q&A. There was a bunch of brilliant questions. And yeah, I think it's time for us to answer some of them.
Beautiful. Thank y'all so much. It was great to hear from everybody. We appreciate y'all being active and, being curious about the process. So I hope that the folks here can be able to help y'all out with some of these questions. So the first one right here says, there was a question from Pace about whether HB 605 covered ministers running conversion therapy. In short, no, it only affects licensed mental health professionals. Let's see. Are there Louisiana-based intersex advocacy groups that we are working in community with, particularly around HB 570? Yes, REJAC for sure. Pearl is, the ED for REJAC, and if you want to get in on that work, please be in touch with them. Are there any groups talking about organized acts of civil disobedience with regards to these anti-trans bills? Real Name Campaign has been very active. Feel free to reach out to them on social media, which should be in the chat. Another question right here. What other sorts of non-electoral action do you suggest for supporting the rights of the LGBTQ plus community? I'm going to defer this one over to Pearl.
Switching over. Could you repeat yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So what other sorts of non-electoral action do you suggest for supporting the rights of the LGBTQ plus community?
Yes. And I may be incorrect, but I think I'm going to tag team this question with Sarah Jane. So afterwards, she may have something to add. So some involvement is legislative or electoral because that's the box in which all of our collaboration exists. It's the environment that can offer, restrict, or enforce. So that's why you are here. We have Pride Day at the Capitol, and we're calling and emailing. And still there are non-electoral, non-legislative actions that can be taken. So you can team up with organizations in your community, your parish, or your state, and you can ask them where you can put your power. The work to capacity ratio is very real within a lot of the organizations that are simply amazing and doing astounding work that are here tonight, and even some that are not. And that capacity is kind of in the balance. So your energy, your labor, your skills, your resources, your sweat equity are all really important in making this happen. For some folks, that may look like you are going through some of the emails to help them find resources and opportunities. For others, it may be you're really good at TikToks and you're really great at social media, and you see their messaging and you want to create something that they can share, or you want to see what's happening there. So I feel like if you want to know what non-electoral things you can do, lean into your passions, lean into the things that you can offer, and then find spaces for that, because there's certainly space for that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Pearl. I'm also seeing that Anaya had something that she wanted to speak on. If we could just pivot to Anaya really quickly, that'd be great. Sorry about that, Anaya.
Oh my gosh, no, it is so fine. You're so good. So there were two questions that I thought I could share a little bit about. So there was someone who asked a question about how recent redistricting efforts affects our advocacy work. So for those of you who really are not familiar with redistricting, basically it's a constitutionally mandated process that every single state has to go through. And basically it determines who you're able to vote for, who represents you and your community. And if you've ever felt like you have to vote for the lesser of two evils, or if you feel like your lawmakers don't really represent your values, redistricting is the key to all of that. So last week, you may have heard that state representatives and senators overrode the governor's veto of gerrymandered maps. So essentially, they weren't good maps, and the governor vetoed them. Well, the state representatives and senators had enough votes to override his veto, because in the state House and Senate, if there's 2/3 vote, then those two bodies are able to override the governor's veto. So what does that mean for us? Well, to be quite transparent, it does make it a little difficult, because if the governor was to veto an anti-trans bill again, which he did do that last year, the sports ban was up last year and he vetoed it. Basically, anti-queer and trans politicians have now shown, because of what happened last week, that they can override his veto. They do have enough votes to do that. And so if they do have enough votes to override his veto of an anti-trans bill, then that would mean that that anti-trans bill could still be enacted as law. So hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the good news is that the maps that the state reps and senators overrode the governor's veto on, those maps are currently in litigation. So it could be that we might not be stuck with those maps. And depending on what the courts say, we could possibly have a legislature that ends up working for us a little bit more. So that was one question about redistricting. Does it make sense to talk about the other question that came up? And yes, y'all, my cat is like doing the most. But there was a question that was basically like, look, federal law does not allow for discrimination. So how can our state have what seems to be inconsistent laws, or like no protections for certain groups of people? So truth is I can go on all day about this, and there's really not an easy answer. But basically, what it means is that if you feel like you've been discriminated against, basically you would sue under federal law. You would sue using federal claims, because that's where your protections are. And you wouldn't be able to sue under state laws. You wouldn't be able to sue in state level court. And just a side note about employment discrimination, like usually, and this is just a rule of thumb, it's not always right, but when there's inconsistencies, or when it feels like there's inconsistencies between federal and state law, usually the law that is more favorable to the person that's suing, that's the law that's going to apply. So that's why usually with discrimination suits, you see people suing under federal law. But hopefully we're going to have a housing non-discrimination bill that's going to pass, and we'll have some additional state level protections for folks. So that's my 2 cents. Hope it was helpful.
I always love hearing Anaya talk. They just explain things and break them down because the legislature is confusing. I'm just going to address one question that was asked in the chat that just, trigger warning. It does ask about a child who may commit suicide. It asks, if a transgender child threatens suicide in the school, what is the school nurse to do? I'm guessing this is related to restrictions on being able to talk about transgender identities. So first and foremost, if you suspect a child is going through abuse or is experiencing suicide, the best place to refer them to is their emergency department, so that they are able to receive appropriate care from a licensed physician who can assess their safety. In reference to this question, this is likely talking about HB 570 that would require school staff to out trans kids to their parents. So the nurse would still follow the same procedures of assessing risk, communicating with parents, and referring to a mental health professional at their emergency room. If HB 570 were to pass, the nurse would be required to tell the child's parents that the child identifies as transgender, or has a gender identity that does not match their sex assigned at birth, or face consequences on their employment at the school, their license, or whatever they plan to put in effect to make this bill enforceable. A key point here is that the nurse is less likely to ask the child about their gender identity, and the child is less likely to talk to the nurse about their gender identity as something that could be contributing to this, and which would eliminate the ability to address the child's need and help them get their needs met so they can feel better. So I mean, excellent example of another way in which these bills are going to put youth in acute risk. And so one of the many reasons to come out and help us fight these bills. Thank you.
SJ, we can't hear you, beloved. Yeah, we still can't. Oh, I got you. Try it. Yeah. Yeah, do you see how you can go to your little square at the bottom and press, yeah.
Thank you everyone for your patience with me. Okay, so the questions that we received that I'm going to answer are really related to how we can communicate with our representatives and how we can figure out which way they're going to vote, when bills are coming up. So I'm going to kind of wrap all of these up into a pretty short answer. Hopefully, because it's late and I already forgot how to unmute myself. So the way that this works is that committee meetings come out on a weekly basis. Committees are held on specific days. So the Senate Education and the House Education Committee are held on different days, and their agendas are put out by the secretaries and the chairs. And so we would suggest that you sign up for emails from Louisiana Trans Advocates, Forum for Equality, REJAC. If you're not already associated with an organization's email list, all of the ones that I just listed or any of the other coalition members will be informing you on when they come up. Again, I will warn you that these come up sometimes very last minute. And so we realize that that makes a hindrance on being able to attend. And so that's why there's so many ways to look below at the link to see on ways to get into calls of action. So from that, I also want to alert everybody to the website. It's legis, legis.la.gov. And that is going to be the best resource for you to get the most current phone number and email address for your senator and your representative. So again, that's legis.la.gov. And I highly recommend you look that up. You can look up your district. You can look it up by parish. You can look it up by committee. And so those are going to be the ways if you want to connect your groups, your organizations that you're working with to the representatives in your area. If you're looking to participate in calls to action, again, I suggest that you sign up for the emails that alert you to actions that have all of the committee members. For example, when you go to House Education tomorrow, we'll have all the committee members there. And so we'll be able to communicate with all of the committee members through that. And so when you're going through the legislative session, there's going to be a lot of bills that you heard through this evening. And so we just want to make sure that it's easy, it's accessible. Most of the organizations also have Facebook pages and Instagram accounts that you can like and follow. A lot of the alerts and actions that we will be posting will be rapid responses that you'll be able to access immediately through social media as well as through the emails. And so I think that kind of sums up all of that if we want to kind of push over to Pearl.
Hey, so I think we're at a good space. First off, thank you, Sarah Jane, for your wisdom. I think we're at a good space with questions. You can continue to ask questions, beloveds, through anywhere that whatever platform you're watching this on. I know we're on 5 or 6. Feel free to send those questions, and those homies can get it to us for sure. So thank you, Ashley, so much. And thank everybody for tuning in, y'all. We did the thing. We educated ourselves, honey. We know what we're up against. We know ways we can stay involved. Hashtag the link. There's ways for service providers, educators, parents, healthcare providers, and faith leaders. Y'all can sign on to show that you support or don't support a particular bill that encourages trans thriving and queer thriving. And so, yeah, y'all. We've reached that beautiful time of the day. And I want to Hey, Elliot. Sorry, I saw you looking down, so let's make sure you know you're being added to the stream. This was a really beautiful night, and in part because of your awesome hosting skills. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're making me blush. Thank you, Natalie, for your energy and your vibrance and, your offering of grounding tonight. I really appreciated it.
Ashe. Well, y'all, the last thing we want to do is share a little bit. Well, I guess first we want to thank all of y'all for coming. And we also want to thank a bunch of our homies who are part of the local coalition. So just take a second. These are all the beautiful people who have been working so hard across the year, over the last 2 years, to build together. Can't name them all, but it includes organizations and individuals. Just know that we love y'all and we appreciate y'all. So without further ado, we want to end on a really, 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 really beautiful note. It stars our amazing co-host, Elliot, who is wise, and deep, as wise and deep as an ocean, if that makes any sense. So we
that
want to
Pisces energy.
Right, exactly. We want to remind folks that it takes courage to do the things that we're trying to do right now, and that we see you and that we hear you and that we hope you'll join us in organizing for the rest of this legislative season. We can't do this without you. And yeah, let's go and protect trans and queer lives, y'all. So with that being said, we'll share with you guys a video. And thank y'all so much if you're watching in the future. We love you. Mwah, 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 mwah.
I really don't want to live it unauthentically. Life is too short. And if I'm feeling like sad or suicidal or anything, then if I'm gonna risk it all anyway, then why not? Why not just live the way that I want to live? 12-ish, I start having queer feelings. I knew before then that I had crushes on girls and things, but the gender identity was not something that I ever really considered. You don't see it. I had no examples of, I knew gay people, I knew that existed. But transitioning is something I never thought was an option. So I'm 15, I'm realizing, okay, my gender identity is not aligning with what I was assigned at birth. My parents had to unlearn and relearn some things. But my mom's really smart. My mom is one of the smartest people that I know, and she hits the books. My mom is looking things up, she's watching videos. After she figured out what being a trans person was, and also was kind of reassured because her first thoughts are I'm afraid for you. If I'm going by the statistics, I need to be prepared to be kicked out. I need to be prepared to face violence from my peers. And I was ready for that. Whatever comes my way, it's better than living a lie. That was the beginning of me not giving a fuck, and it was liberating. Yeah, I really didn't care what other people thought. I'm this is what my name is. I would love if you called me this. But I really don't care if you don't. Or changing your name legally is a really big barrier for a lot of trans folks to seek employment, housing, medical care, even going out for a drink. Having your name not match who you are on the inside on your legal documentation is a source of not just frustration, but strife. I think another thing is that the dead name gets weaponized a lot, and they use it as a way to discriminate against trans people. I've experienced employment discrimination, but having my name legally changed was something that no one could take away from me. Don't let anyone tell you who you are. You know who you are. You know the feelings that you're feeling, and be okay with who you are. It's okay. It's really okay. It's not abnormal. It's not strange. This is something that is completely natural.